Welcome to Fun with Annuities, where every single week I welcome a celebrity guest expert that can help you maximize Chapter 2 of your life. Listen, learn, laugh, and love every minute of the most unique financial podcast on the planet. Let's get to it. Welcome to Fun with Annuities. I'm your host, Stan, the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent, licensed in all 50 states. I am so happy that I have a repeat guest that has graced our presence once again. Repeat after me, 3 words, Marcia Mantell. I'll give all that, all her stuff, all her websites, etc., that you can go to. But she has a new book out that we're going to talk about. But we set the retirement planning podcast world on fire with our last interaction when we talked about retirement is like making lasagna. And people love that. And I love that because I love lasagna. So I still have a standing offer when I'm in Massachusetts to have the Marcia Mantell retirement lasagna, an actual lasagna made for me. And I am going to call in that chip down the road. Marcia Mantell, thank you so much for joining us on Fun with Annuities.
Well, Stan, thank you so much for inviting me back. And I'm ready and waiting for your arrival here in lovely Southern Massachusetts. So you come and see me. We can have a little walk with the pilgrims while the lasagna is baking, and then we'll, have dinner.
Just promise me that we're going to use real cheese.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Don't go crazy and be all trendy like my youngest daughter and, Dad, this kind of tastes like cheese. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It's not cheese. When I say cheese, I mean cheese. None of that low fat skim milk stuff, just the real full on cheese.
That's
you do like sausage too, right? Did we talk about that last time?
Absolutely. No, I went through the vegan phase. It was a horrible 3 years of my life that I'll never go back to. But the older you get, the more you realize that you got to live for the day. And that's part of my retirement plan. And what I tell my clients all the time is 2 things. Number 1, there's no U-Hauls behind hearses. And if you see that, send me a picture. And number 2, fly first class or your kids will. Number 2 is a real deal. Okay. Because I have 2 daughters.
That is, Dan and I have had that exact conversation about, we have 2 daughters, and it is because, we're of that age now where we're thinking about distribution, long-term distribution of assets, and who are we going to spend on?
That's right.
And my husband's very kind. He's just a very sweet man. He said, well, we do really need to leave a lot of money to the kids. And their mother is, no, we don't.
No.
We need to spend all that money on me.
The last check should bounce, as I always tell people. And the life insurance will cover that when you pass away. Let's talk about your book. When we got it at the office, you sent it to us. When I brought it home, my wife grabs it, wants to send it to my oldest daughter, which we're going to do. But it is really cool. Talking about cooking, it looks like a cookbook. And the title of it is Cooking Up Your Retirement Plan. There's so much to this and I can't, I could hold it up in front of the camera. That does no one any good on the podcast, but that would be like showing paintings to blind people. But we are going to have that link on our site to Marcia's book, but I would recommend you taking a look at it. The one thing I know, having written 7 books on annuities, is this: writing books is very hard. And it's time consuming and cumbersome, and the detail is amazing. But with your book, Marcia, I was blown away on the detail and the proactive thinking that you've done to try to make it simple for people with charts and easy to do fill in stuff. Is that the way your brain works?
Well, first of all, thank you for the very nice compliments about my Cooking Up book.
Love it.
And yes, it is the way my brain works. I believe a few things, Stan. One is, now, and you also have to understand, I live with an entire extended family of scientists, like PhDs, MDs, these really brainy people.
Okay.
And I love them all, but I never understand them. So my philosophy has become, if you can't explain to me, just me, on a single sheet of paper that you're writing and drawing with a crayon, then you don't understand it, so that you can teach it to someone who's not in your same you know, sky plane. Um, it's very, very difficult for people who aren't in our industry, who don't do
Oh,
this every day,
yeah, absolutely.
to grasp what we're saying. And so if I couldn't explain it with fun worksheets and charts and
Mhm.
just a way to get your brain to go, oh, that's what inflation does? Oh, we talk about the 4% rule, whether you agree with it or not, it's still a good marker and it's not 10% withdrawals.
Hmm.
So we talk about this 4% rule like everyone knows what it is. And A, it's not a rule, it's a guideline. And
Right.
B, that means you could only take out 4% of whatever bucket of money you have. But people don't make that connection because we all think in dollars. So I put it in dollars. I forget what the math works out to, but if you have $1 million, you get $40,000 a year.
Right.
That's it. And it's the $40,000 that stops people in their tracks. It's like, oh, I
Yeah.
can't live on $40,000.
Right.
Like, well, I know that, but you didn't know that until today because you've never made the kinds of conversions and the way we all think in the industry is just not how normal people think. So the book was fun because I worked with so many consumers. When you see them, up close and personal, you see what they don't understand, and it's everything. They
No, I
don't
agree.
understand
No, I
anything about this beast that we all talk about so casually. 30 years in retirement, it'll be fun. We'll play golf.
my followers know what I always say. If you can't explain it to a 9-year-old, don't buy it. No offense to 9-year-olds. And that
Right.
really is really what it comes down to. The financial industry, like all industries, has its own language. And
Mhm.
the problem with most people in the industry is they speak in that language. Think about like going to a foreign country and you don't speak the language. It's really hard.
Yeah.
People have to really break it down. And that's what I love about this book. One of the things, just starting with section 1 of the book. I mean, you asked a great question, which is just thinking about retirement and your future as a retiree. I think that's very important. I call it chapter 2 is about you. That's really what you're saying, right?
It really is. It's what triggered this sort of structure in chapter 1 for me on the retiree. I have a longtime colleague who got retired. Her company let her go, which very many boomers,
Mhm.
millions of us are going to, face that. And she wasn't prepared to go, even though she was of the right age group.
Right.
She was planning to work several more years, but there was the door. And she's the one who said to me at one point, I finally introduced myself as a retiree. I was at a party this weekend and somebody asked what I did. And I said, oh, I'm retired. I'm now a retiree
Mhm.
2 years after the fact.
Yeah.
So it's not a label that we all want. And it's very hard to have that roll off your tongue when you're talking about yourself. So it's these snippets that I get when talking to real people, the struggle they go through. Or a gentleman who said it took him 2 years to get the hang of being retired. Because
Totally
how
agree
do
with that.
I
Yeah.
put my days together? Because we just don't realize that what structure, the benefits of structure do for us. And we've been structured since we were in kindergarten.
Well, and I
So
think that's a very good point. Retirement as a category and as a something we discussed is probably within the last 50 years of the world. There was no retirement. People worked and then they died. And
yeah.
I do understand why the A personalities that go hard all their lives and then they shut it down. They either drink themselves to death or flip channels to death or eat themselves to death or, just bore themselves to death. I do think
Mhm.
there needs to be a structure and that is hard. And, part of chapter 2, as you point out so nicely in the book, is, you got kind of a part-time job looking at your money. That's not a full-time job. It's a part-time job if you're organized, and that's what this book does. But there is a struggle that you're one of the few people to address, which is not only the financial part of retirement, but the emotional part of retirement.
Very much so. And again, it's tied up with whatever routine you have, whether you work in a for paid job, or maybe you're an at-home mom, or you've become an at-home homemaker and
Sure.
independent person, you still have created the structure to your day and these groups. And in addition to this book, I'd also updated my what's the deal with retirement planning for women, and
Great
added
stuff.
a chapter, a written chapter to go with this chapter too in this
Hmm.
book that goes into a little bit more elaborateness. And it starts for me with, when you think about your days, you're constantly interrupted by other people at work, whether you
Hmm.
like them or not. You have all these interruptions, or you can get up and walk down the hall and chat with somebody, and then
Sure.
it's time for lunch, and we all go to lunch. And for decades, my days were structured around lunch. And the team would come in the morning. It was like, okay, are we eating in the team room, or are we going out today?
Right.
And so it's this idea for me, it's this humble cafeteria that started in first grade. We've had since we were 6 years old, 6 to 66, 60 years of going somewhere for lunch. And then all of a sudden, the rug is pulled out from under you.
Hmm.
It's like, well, now who am I going to have lunch with today? And you have to step up and make the effort. No one's going to swing by your house now
No.
from 5 blocks away to say, hey, you want to go to lunch today? Stan, you want to go to lunch? That's not how people operate. So you have to take the lead. Well, that's not natural for most people. So it's going to be a real shocker, or you don't know how to do it. And you're right, you sit on the couch and you flip channels. And
I,
what a
I,
waste.
yeah, I think that people need to just plan for chapter two to be somewhat of an upheaval and a
Mm,
pivot. I always say when you come to the fork in the road, pick it up.
right.
You know, this is a great example.
Hallelujah.
We're talking to Marcia Mantell. She is one of my favorite guests of all time, and her website is Mantell Retirement. Mantell is Mantell retirement.com. You can sign up for newsletter. She's got multiple books, multiple. She's out there spreading truth with no agendas, which is very hard to find in the retirement industry. So we'll have that linked. Again, it's mantellretirement.com, two L's on Mantell. Marcia, 3 square meals a day. People, when you hear 3 squares, they think of people in prison.
Yeah.
Um, we're not talking about prison, or maybe we are with retirement prison, depending on how you approach it. But when you talk about 3 squares a day, what are you talking about when it comes to retirement?
I'm really talking about here of having to take that initiative to figure out breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and who you're going to talk to, and chatting on text and Instagram or Facebook is not chatting. That is using your thumbs or typing, not
Hmm.
chatting. And it's this idea that we tell people, for decades, oh my gosh, you're going to retire one day. You have to retire. You have to be ready to retire.
Right.
But we don't give them any structure, no framework. And so we're sending them out there. And one of the biggest ways, and I think the biggest disruption for people is that their days they're completely unglued now.
Right.
There's nothing that holds them together, but we still need to eat. Right. So I used those 3 squares. I didn't think about the prison angle. So thanks for putting that in my head now.
It's a
Um,
retirement prison out there, Marcia.
it be, and you can hang out in your retirement communities like
That's
it's
right.
and with prettier
They're called
walls.
gated communities. Some people call
Yeah,
them prisons.
exactly. There you go. So it's something we have to, in order, I believe, in order to be successful at these next 30 years, we have to take this initiative to understand it. Like, fine, you don't need to eat breakfast with anybody, maybe, or maybe you go out once a week with your friends, a certain group of friends, your high school friends, let's say, or whatever structure it is that you're starting to put into place, so that you have a few anchors in your week. Otherwise, you open your planner, your calendar, you look, online, and you have absolutely nothing on your days. And I find that to be such a distressing thought after 40 years where your entire calendar was booked and not of your own choosing necessarily.
Hmm.
These meetings, these commitments, this deadline. And it is literally overnight. It's like a light switch. It stops. And for me, that's more dramatic than the paycheck stopping, which it also does. But what will you do? So I think anchoring things around food is a way most people can, whether you're the cook or the eater, most people can go, oh, there's something to that. There's a structure, there's something familiar about that. And oh, yeah, I do have lunch at noon every day, with the guys, with the gals. Well, where are the guys and gals? Well, you know what? They're still at work. You're not. So that's the
The
back
three square.
thinking.
I like the correlation of retirement and cooking because there's a structure to cooking. Even if you're cooking from scratch, there's a structure, but there's a
Yep.
structure to eating. There's a structure to getting together. There's a familiarity. Even the true misanthropes like myself, Marcia, need interaction with human beings, however flawed we might think they are. Right?
Exactly.
That's my
And,
Larry David
so you're
thing.
gonna, yeah, well, so you're gonna, think about and complain about if you haven't had some kind of interaction with them.
Right.
You know, yeah.
And I think that's the scary part about retirement. And we all read studies about one of the biggest problems when people do retire is loneliness.
Yes.
Um, and I think as we all know, and it's cliche to even say it, is retirement's more than just money. Now you do address that very well in the book, and it's a process and it's a procedure, but it's that part-time job that you do, but you got to figure out the other part of that. So the other thing I wanted to ask, the 10 essential ingredients, we talked about the three
Mm.
meals a day, but what are those ingredients? Go over some of those that are key for people to put in their brain, put in their structure, put in their day, put in their week, and put in their plan.
Yeah, these are kind of, I think, a fun way to translate what we do as an industry and what so many of us know now, like the back of our hand. But these are, again, not things that regular people out there know or know how to address. So these ingredients are, the way you need to think about both your time and your money. So first and foremost, the odds you're going to live a long time is real. So many people tell me when I work with them or just talk with them, like, yeah, I might make it into my late 70s. Like, oh, have we really not made any more progress on longevity than that? Longevity is the odds that you're going to outlive the averages.
Sure.
And a whole lot of us are going to outlive the averages. There's no promise, there's no guarantee. But if you're that person, and half of you will be, you better have some money to spend. So trying to get people off the seven, I don't know why people want to die in their 70s, Stan. Like, you just finished working. You're still viable. What's the deal with 70s?
That's the rock
So
and roll attitude. Don't leave a legacy, leave a scar,
there you go. Absolutely.
No, I don't
So
know. I think people they don't, there's three phases of retirement in my world. It's go go, slow go, and no go. And
yeah,
so, everyone's good with the go go and they know they
go
get into
go.
the slow go, but they don't plan for the no go. And you kind of need to do that because most likely with just medical breakthroughs and just how we live,
Yes.
we are going to live longer, even if you're not hitting on all cylinders. I always tell people that you need to plan for all three phases. There will be a time if you live long enough that you're not going to be hitting on all cylinders, and the only job that you could actually get would be president. So that would be there's the rim shot regardless of party,
Joking over that. Yeah.
you can't you can't get any other job but president. But most of us aren't going to run for president in our late 70s and 80s. At least I'm not.
Right. Well, I'm not either. Yeah. But you're so right on these slow go years. Um, it's so interesting. So many people feel they planned for those years by having an estate plan in place. Like,
Right.
well, I have my will. My will is updated. Well, that's nice. But they never plan for I call them more the disability years. And you
Hmm.
might not be actually disabled or have a disability, except that you can't move through the day like when you were 60.
Correct.
You, in fact, barely move through the day. And pretty much you're homebound. You have assistance a lot of times. And those are not like, that's not a week. That can be 5, 10, 15 years for people.
Hmm.
And so, no, you're not traveling anymore. You're not, running around with the grandkids, but you're still alive and you're still going to spend money, be different, but you're going to be there. And in my case, I mean, it's so funny. Sometimes people say, well, you just say that. Like, what do you really know? Well, what I know is my parents are in their mid 80s, both still going. They're in the slow go years. So they had their go goes. Now it's kind of a little bit slower. My dad needs to slow down a little more. My in laws are 100 and almost 100.
Mm.
And my mother in law will be 100 in April. And my father in law turned 100 last May. Let me tell you, 100 is old age. And their lives are incredibly different now than they were 10 years ago. But they're still relatively healthy. Their bodies are healthy. Their minds, not as much. They need a lot of care. It's a big commitment. It is very hard to be old.
Yeah, I
And you
just
need
added a category. We now have go, slow
Yep.
go, no go, and hell no go.
And that's where they are.
95 and up is hell no go.
Yes.
Go.
Yeah.
Because,
But it's both of them. And
wow.
yeah. So it's real. And it won't, again, no promises here. But when it happens to you, when you're
Mhm.
the one living that long, you do need to be prepared. Fortunately for us, they are prepared. They had enough financial assets. They planned well. Um, Not everyone does.
Well, and that
So
brings us back to your book because I think that there, in the world of do-it-yourselfers, this is
mhm.
a do-it-yourselfer. Okay, you could take this book and walk around with it everywhere you go, including the estate planning lawyer. So, you got
Yes.
to have, when you're putting it into place, trust. That's not do-it-yourselfer stuff unless you are a lawyer. But even then, most lawyers hire lawyers. But this book, in combination with licensed professional CPAs and estate planning lawyers, you literally can do it yourself because the structure that Marcia provides in the book is there for you, for all you do-it-yourselfers that don't want to pay any fees and you think you can do it, and you probably can. Was that kind of was the emphasis of writing it, as I'm a writer like you, is to get it out of your system because it's good material and you want people to read it. But I'm assuming your target market is that do-it-yourselfer that wants to get their hands around the whole thing, right?
It's actually twofold. So absolutely, that my initial thinking here was this is for baby boomers and Gen Xers,
Good.
anyone 50 and older who can sit down and start to map out and see. I also believe if you don't see it on paper, you don't fundamentally sort of have it in your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have these ideas that waft out here in the clouds, but until you do the plan, I call it plan ABC, until you look at your next 10 years. So I'm 62 now, and oh my God, Stan, when you write 62, 63, 64, etc., and you get into your 70s, by the end of 10 years, you sort of stop in your tracks and go, my God, I'm going to be in my 70s? And it's not that far away. So you need to get this stuff written down. That's why for the do-it-yourselfers, I think that was the main focus.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also work a lot with financial advisors and helping them with clients who are moving into the retirement era. And for advisors, if their clients come prepared
Mm-hmm.
with this book, it saves them unbelievable amounts of time.
Absolutely.
So it
Unfortunately,
turned out to,
advisors, as you know, and you're not going to admit to it because they are your client base, they're
oh, I
not that
might.
smart. They're not that smart.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding.
well,
No,
yeah.
what most the problem with advisors, because I've been doing this for 3+ decades, is that most of them think that they are masters of the universe and they can do it and they don't need any. This is a literal book that if you were an advisor and you're in the financial planning world, you buy 200 copies and give one to every single person and then call them up and say, hey, how's that going? You going through the book? Because yeah, it would make their life easier. And it would make the client's life easier as well. Even if they decided to move to another advisor, they would still stay on the plan of this book, this, what I call the retirement cookbook, which is really what it is.
It really is. And you think about and what helped me. I had this idea years ago because I watch an awful lot of television, and I love the Food Network. And you see these, the Pioneer Woman and the guys on the kitchen and Alex Guarnaschelli, my favorite chef. These people come out and they make the most elaborate but beautiful
Hmm.
dishes,
Right.
and it's all in an order. You have these ingredients, and you mix this with that, and you do this with that, and then you put it in the oven. And there's just such a logic to it. And that's what we didn't have. I couldn't find it anywhere in our industry. This overall logic
There's
with
no
anything
logic.
from milk.
There's you know what it replaces logic in the retirement industry? Product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Product. And product is
So
not logic.
that's right. We went from there's a need, and then here's a product. We mixed all the stuff in the middle.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm hoping the cookbook does. It fills in
It does.
all the stuff in the middle. So it's like my problem or my opportunity is retirement. I'm going to retire. There will be products. I promise you, there will be products at the end of this, but we can't just shove the product, like the hammer onto
Right.
the people.
Right.
So we've got to bring them along and do it in an efficient way. So if you're an advisor, this brings a lot of efficiency to the process. And if you're a do-it-yourselfer, here it is. I'm giving
I
you the cookbook.
I love the word efficiency, and that does apply to this book. But what applies to this book more than anything, which is one of my favorite words, is simplicity. And I mean, that's what it really brings, is it brings it down in English. I always, when I've done 1,000 videos plus, and we keep doing them. And what people say, it's so simple when you explain it. Why isn't it that simple? And my answer is, it is that simple. I don't know why people want to explain it, but it is simple. Retirement planning is simple. What isn't simple is retirement as a category with your life. But if you can get the money side, the financial side of your life in order and simple, then you can focus on the other. I think that's what this book, in my opinion, after flipping through it a few times, that's what it does. And it's not, it's not War and Peace. It's not 782 pages. It's a
Right.
quick read. It's an afternoon, and you could keep going through it and mark up the book all day long. But in section 4, though, you threw me with one of the you asked a question kind of like, you know, analyzing the palm of your hand, and the question you asked was, how much will I spend each year in retirement? That's
Yeah.
like saying, how's a rainbow made?
Yeah.
That's tough. Explain why you threw that out there as the proverbial 2x4 to the forehead.
Yeah. Um, the key to financial success in retirement, in my humble opinion, is not what products you have or how great your investment strategy is. It's knowing how freaking much you spend.
It's really
Because
that
if you,
basic, isn't it?
it really is. And don't give me the fancy words. Some people, well, what's your annual consumption? Isn't that
Stop.
easy? I hate that. I hate that word. It's
Stop.
just you spend at the grocery store. How much does gas cost?
Right.
This is what real people know.
Right.
And those who have always had to live, pretty close to the paycheck, type,
Hmm.
they understand spending. They don't we don't need fancy words. I mean, yeah, the next page is like, well, what are your essential expenses versus your discretionary expenses? But it's just you have to spend versus how much would you like to spend. But it's all about the spending. And what really throws people when you sit down with regular people and I do these map out 30-year cash flows,
Hmm.
because different buckets of money, different investments or products that you have turn on at different times across
Right.
a 30-year continuum, right?
Sure.
And they deliver certain amounts of money. What throws people off is that money is actually on the front of the 1040 income. And therefore you owe income tax on it.
Hmm.
So you might say, I spend $60,000 a year, and your investments and your products deliver $60,000 a year. Well, you have a mismatch. You don't have $60,000 of spending because you need to pay the tax first.
Hmm.
And that whole concept is so hard for people to wrap their heads around. And so that's why I focus first on just know how much you're going to spend each year. And it doesn't have to be exact, but it needs to be in the ballpark. You can't say, "Oh, I spend, let's see, $5,000 a month," but you really spend $10,000 a month. Like, we got to be closer than that. And think about the things that you've never had to put on paper before.
Hmm.
With this budgeting exercise, you think about budgets and spending, like, okay, groceries, healthcare, maybe bills, electric technology and so forth. But you don't think about bringing your kids home for Christmas, or that you're hosting Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving can cost somebody $1,000. Did
Right.
you build that in for November? I can assure you, you did not. So it's those kinds of things to bring awareness, bring reality. And, back to Dan and me, I've done all the books since we were 21 years old. And Dan's idea of cash flow and mine are very different. My cash flow is actual facts of how much we spend every month. Dan's is, I can go to Home Depot or Costco and buy anything I want, you know. And it's this disconnect between us, and we work at it. And Dan's always surprised, like, we can't have spent that much.
I know.
Like,
I know.
well, in fact, we did. So
No,
are we good with that?
there is, especially my wife and my she's much more detailed than I am. I know that's hard to believe,
Oh,
but it's it is true. And you did cover how to build a retirement paycheck. Obviously, annuities and other things fall into that. People can go to my site at theannuityman.com and run quotes till your heart's desire 24/7, 365. But there are many things that can encompass that, what I call the income floor, which is, you're combining the best inflation annuity on the planet, Social Security, with whatever else is going to come in every single month. Um, and I'm assuming you're a proponent, kind of like I am, of once you have your income floor in place, your blood pressure goes down, right?
it sure does. It's so funny you say that. So the other night, I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know what I was dreaming about or thinking about. And all of a sudden, I said, "Oh my God, I don't think we have enough money for retirement." It's like, where did
This was
this
like
come
2 in
from?
the morning, probably 2:30.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
it's like, where did that come from? Well, we have plenty of money. We know it. We have a plan. But I woke up with this kind of like jolt, like, oh my God, we're not going to have enough money for 30 years. And I'm dividing our portfolio by 30, going, that's not enough. And when I got up, I walked around the house for a few minutes. It's like, oh, you're such an idiot. You forgot about Social Security in your annuity stream.
Right. Right.
So, I forgot the floor. This was above the floor. This is the second floor of the house. So I had to laugh. I don't know what made me wake up with that thought, but I did. And I think lots of people must wake up in the middle of the night with that thought. Oh my God, I'm not going to have enough. And I don't want them to be doing that, Stan. That's not how we want to spend our
No.
60s and 70s and 80s.
No.
You know, it's just,
My concern with the country is when I read the stats where 60% of adults have $400 in their checking account,
yeah.
or 50% or 40 to 50%, depending on what article you read, don't even have a checking account. They're doing their banking at large gas stations, those big, huge gas stations, and payday loans and things like that, which for people like us and people like that are watching this on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel and all the podcast platforms, you're going, really? Is that real?
Yeah,
That's real.
that's real.
And
Yeah.
there's a part of me that when we talk like this, we're in a bubble, but we're in that bubble because we're trying to address the people in that bubble with us to do better in the bubble. But there's some things happening outside the bubble that are pretty tough, and that concern me as just a citizen of the country. How are we going to get our arms around that? And I don't. That's not an easy fix, but I throw that out because I want people to know that Marcia and I both came from no money, and we've
Mhm.
scrimped and saved, and here we are. But there's no arrogance to the conversation of retirement planning. We are, and the people listening and watching this are fortunate to be considering retirement planning and reading Marcia's book. So I want everyone to go into this exercise, and when you buy her book, you know, be humble about it. And I think that the more successful people I meet, the more humble they seem to be. It's the ones that aren't are the ones that are faking it before they're making it. So I digress a little bit because I just think that, we are talking to the 10% of the country that can plan for retirement, are planning for retirement, have worked hard for it. Nothing was given to you. But
Nothing.
it is a head scratcher also going into retirement of how to also give money away, which kind of leads me into your last chapter, which I thought was a very interesting title of estate planning or family legacy planning. I think obviously you need both, but I think you can also throw into that philanthropic planning as part of the estate planning. Do you agree?
I totally agree. And that's where it typically falls, which is why I didn't call it out in exactly,
Right.
a big category. But you went this direction, Stan, because a number of years ago I did a whole series of creative presentations for the low wage workers
Mm-hmm.
at certain employers. And I think even employers don't quite have their hands around how incredibly difficult it is to be a low wage worker in America.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not possible to make ends meet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so suggestions and how do you do that delicately, you
Right.
know, um, it is very difficult to stand up in front of people who don't have a bank account. That we just think is, of course, everyone has a bank account. No,
No,
and you're right. The numbers are staggering.
they're huge.
They're huge, and it really is the chasm between the haves and the have-nots has
Sure.
gotten wider and wider and wider. Which I'm going to digress for a second and then get back to estate planning.
Sure.
You also know I'm somewhat of a have some expertise in Social Security.
Yes, you do.
And I am passionate about Social Security and the importance it plays, not for the wealthy people. Like, come on, people, get over it. It's nice that we're all getting Social Security because we have paid in, so we should get our payout. But that's not who it was designed for.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed to make sure that especially women stay out of poverty, but just out of poverty
Yeah.
when they're old and retired and can no longer work.
Mm-hmm.
And that social safety net is so critically important to the nation that we're just I use the phrase fear mongering, that
Mm-hmm.
these headlines and this baloney going on in Congress, it's just fear mongering that makes me so angry
Right.
because we're scaring regular people and people whose only source of retirement income is going to be is Social Security. And so to say we're going to raise the retirement age, that's just insane. There's no way we can raise the retirement age to 70 when the people this program is meant to protect are actually all the people in the service industry, in the
Right.
construction industry, in the
Mm-hmm.
heavy, heavy lifting kinds of businesses that run America. They can't work until 70. So it's an automatic, massive pay cut for them. And I don't believe the Congress will go there. But let's scare everybody in the meanwhile.
Well, I always
I'll
tell
be off
people
that soapbox.
if you know the stat that 6 out of 10 adults have their net worth in their front pocket, that you'll hesitate the next time you want to flip somebody off as you're driving down the road because they might be in 6 of those 10 cars and with
Yeah.
nothing to lose. So,
Yeah.
the reason I bring this up is not because I'm political either way. In fact, I would encourage people as they go into retirement to be less political and more philanthropic. Just be less emotionally political if you
Yeah.
can in retirement. I think that should be part of the cookbook as well. You can be
I
on
love
one
that.
side or the other, but take the emotion out and be rational and understand how fortunate you are that we're talking about retirement. We're planning for retirement. Part-time job that you're going to have is managing the money that you've worked so hard, and they are not going to go confiscate it. So slow down.
Yeah.
It just be as I get older, I know you're saying to yourself, Marcia, there's no way he's old. Yes, I am. um,
But you look so
oh
young.
my gosh. But anyway, the older I get, it's the more kind of grounded into the reality of seeing things for 30 years and actually being a little bit spoiled of dealing with what I call rich people for 30 years. When you work with Dean
Mhm.
Witter, Payne Weber, Morgan Stanley, UBS, and you're the annuity man, um, you're dealing with people that have money,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
And a
there's
lot
a
of it.
lot of people that call us that don't have a ton of money, and we have to tell them that's you need to accumulate more. And I'm not sure it's possible for them to accumulate more, but annuities are not the solution
Right.
for them because of that. So a little bit off of my soapbox, but let's go back to the estate planning, family planning part of your book.
Yeah. This is, I think, so important that I very often get in a room full, 200 people are in a room. I talk about estate planning, and you see people going, I don't need an estate plan. And I might have shared this with you before. I let them know that if you are breathing, you need an estate plan.
Correct.
Because once you're not breathing, well, you don't need one. But it's so important because people think it's just for the multimillionaires with the mansion on the hill. But estate plans do everything. They set in place for you when you can't make your own decisions,
Mhm.
all the things that you want the way you want them. So whether it's passing money on to your children, your grandchildren, etc., but it's this charitable piece that's so fascinating. And it can be any charity that's important to you.
Mhm.
I happen to be, I think, we have two cats. We love our cats. I give money to the cat shelter where we got the cats. Now, will I give more when I'm dead? I don't know. I haven't quite decided that yet. But it's just thinking it could be anything from your animals to your university to your church, your synagogue, your temple,
Yeah, mine is
and
hospice.
hospice. What a fabulous
Because those people
organization.
are angels. If you've ever had a
Yes.
loved one in a hospice situation, you realize how much of a complete piece of crap you are because they're
Yeah.
such great
Yeah.
people.
Because
You're
they're
like,
they're so amazing.
oh my gosh. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's mine. But yeah, I agree with that. And I think that retirement, and I like this part of your book, you're reminding people, hey, yeah, we're going to leave some to our family, but for a lot of us out there, we're just trying not to ruin them. You know, it's just, I mean,
I launched you girls. You're on your own. Do your own thing. Mama's done. Yeah.
I always tell people my girls, and I love them to death, but they're going to helicopter into my funeral and drive off in a Lamborghini. And they'll be
Well,
sad for the first 10 miles. Trust me. But
that's
after that, they'll
hilarious.
shift into gear and be like, man, glad he left us all this money. No,
Yeah.
hopefully, and I always I've done videos on this and strategies called lovingly handcuffing your beneficiaries. What you're talking about in this chapter is lovingly handcuffing your beneficiaries if that's what you choose to do or you think that's important. In other words,
Yeah.
controlling it from the grave and also controlling it as you're looking at your grave plot.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, buy your grave plot. Take care. Make your own. I'm big on this. Create your own funeral. Do not leave this to your children to do for you.
Correct.
That's just being irresponsible. Like, suck it up, people. Pick your own decisions. Pick your own plot. Pay for it.
Or like
Write
I
your.
did, pick the urn that's solid gold, Marcia, with the
That
Stan
will
the
be
Annuity
lovely.
Man logo on it,
Uh-huh.
two of them, so they can split me and put me on their shelf,
On each shelf.
on each shelf.
Yep.
I
There.
mean,
See.
it's the last part of marketing that I'll be like, did you really put your logo on the urn? Yes, I did.
Why not? That's not a bad idea. Boomer retirement briefs. I'm pretty passionate about my blog too.
Whatever
So
whatever gate I'm at the end, that'll be the
yeah,
question. Did you really put your logo? Yes, I did.
yes, I did. It's right here in writing in my estate
It's a
plan.
perpetual plan of marketing. As I always tell
Yeah.
people, Jimmy Dean, the sausage guy, he's been dead for 15 years, but he's still on the commercials.
Well, he sure is, and I have Jimmy Dean sausage in my fridge right now.
It's called
Love it.
artificial intelligence. See, that's the scary part for a lot of people, Marcia. I'm going to die and someone's going to get all my videos and do AI and just keep putting videos out. And people are like, I thought he was dead. No,
Well, we
no,
don't really know, do
no, we
we?
don't know. We don't know. We
Yeah,
do know Jimmy Dean's dead, but the sausage is still good, right?
it's delicious. Yes, I'm a big fan. Well, it's both the charitable giving, which so an interesting little tidbit maybe with our two girls, we started years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, at Christmas when both the kids were home. We do family finance fun. So one of my more creative ways to have a tea party, and we talk
Nice.
about money.
Nice.
And one of the years, the top, so I come up with an agenda every December, and we talk about budgets. We talk about um, how credit scores work and why it's important to have a good credit score. So
Mhm.
really financial topics that don't get talked about really. And one year it was about charitable giving. And so we come up as a family with where should we be directing some of our money?
Right.
Because at that time they didn't have any money to direct, but they had causes that were important to them. We said, look, some of this family money, because you're not going to get it in the end now, because we're going to give it away. Where should it go? And it was just a really interesting exercise to, you know, hear what they had to say. They had never thought about it this way.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, we could pick something that was important to us and we could direct some dollars that way. So I think it's important to get your children involved, get them involved early. And then also think about the gifting versus inheriting. People have different
Mhm.
philosophies on that. You don't have to gift up to the limits. I think this year, what's the limit? $18,000, I
It
think
was.
in
Yeah.
2024. So I could gift to each of the girls $18,000. I'm not going to. Dan could also gift $18,000 to each of the kids. Don't think you have to go to the limit. It's just the idea that, maybe the kids need or want, they both need new cars. Maybe I could gift $5,000 to each of them toward their car. And you can put informal strings on the money, but legally you can't. Technically you can't. But that would be the intention. You could. And, it helps them in a time when they need some help. And it doesn't have to wait until they're 70 and we finally die. So it's really important to talk about these things between
Mhm.
you and your spouse or partner, or, these people who are important to you and get the kids involved. So
Yeah, we
that's one
have been my wife and I, the lovely Christine, who has put up with me for 36 years.
problem.
We are having those conversations of do we leave the kids the money now or do we wait until they die? My opinion on that may differ from other people, but for me, I'm going to leave it to them now because they need it. We've all been there in our 20s and 30s. We kind of needed it, right? So
That yes, that's the real, and especially today, things are harder today than they
it
were for
is.
us in my 20s were not a picnic, and I know yours weren't either.
Mm-mm,
And we were scrapping for every dollar we could, 2 nickels and like you put them in each hand.
absolutely.
And I mean, those were tough, tough years. Why would I want my kids to go through the same misery?
Yeah. Now, for all you
So
out there that are yelling at the screen and speakers going, they got to pull themselves up by the
yeah,
bootstraps like I did, walk up and
yeah,
down the hill with no shoes. No, they don't. Okay,
right.
they do not. And so I understand where that middle class mentality, little middle class mentality comes from, but I encourage everyone listening to this is to think through that. Give you an example. My mom, 84 years old, she's probably going to outlive me, walks 7 miles a day. She's an absolute Southern spitfire. When she passes away, that money she's going to leave my sister and I, I'll probably spend it on guitars. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So I think a lot of the cooking your retirement plan is realizing that you can give some money away and realizing that the money that you accumulate, you're probably not going to be able to spend it. That's hard for people.
right.
I had a person the other day, Marcia, $9 million. That's what they had. And they were worried about inflation. And I said, excuse me, Fred,
Yeah,
don't be arrogant. Okay. You're going to be okay.
yeah,
So, let's all be rational and not be pushed by the agendas on cable television, both sides on
yeah,
inflation and like you said earlier, fear mongering.
yeah,
When you have accumulated money and worked hard and scrimped and saved, and thank goodness you did that for yourself, you're going to be okay. You're going to be
right.
okay.
Keep it in perspective.
Hmm.
This is where I think we have to. I heard a comment on the radio the other day that, the headlines maybe aren't always complete, which I thought was really funny. That stuck with me. It's like,
That's nicely
I
put.
usually call them, bold-faced lies, but
Yes.
yeah, they're not complete. So look at a few things in America today, and probably the world today. You have to read the entire article because often the articles are extremely well written and they completely debunk the headline.
Right.
People see the headline, they get frozen there and they don't read. So
Right.
first, read the darn article and
Right.
read several on the same topic.
Correct.
And always put this in perspective, in historical perspective. And I have an inflation chart that starts back, well, I have two. One that starts in 1900 or 1912, when
Hmm.
inflation first started being tracked. It is my favorite chart. And it's all these little teeny weeny lines. They're high in some years
Hmm.
and they're low. A
Sure.
couple times there's deflation, during
Sure.
the Depression and such. People look at that and go, oh, that's what we've been having for inflation. And then you zoom in from 1982 to today, the last 40 years or so, and it's all but a straight line.
Right.
Till we had this little COVID mess, right? And so it's like, people, take a chill pill. We were all the boomers, we were all around, when
Hmm.
gas topped $1 a gallon.
Oh,
That was
absolutely.
such an outrage, right? In
Right.
the 1970s.
Right.
So there was a 10-year period from the mid 70s to the mid 80s when inflation was rampant.
Hmm.
We all lived through that. Like, do you really not remember that? And then it got down to 2 and 3 and it bounces along not too badly. Like, had a 40-year amazing run. Take it easy. You do have money. You can still afford your eggs at the grocery store.
We're
But
talking with Marcia. Go ahead.
go ahead. Oh, no, where I worry is the people who can't afford the eggs at the grocery store. And that's again where charitable
No
giving, I'm
doubt.
big on food.
Yeah.
So we do a lot on the food side of charity.
We're talking
Because you
with
got
Marcia Mantell. We got to wrap it up here pretty quick because we're when we get going, we get going. And
just
we're gonna have her
flies
new
by.
yeah, we're gonna have her new book, the link to that so you can buy it. It's called Cooking, but cooking, like they say in the South, cooking up your retirement plan. And I think what she's done so well with this is she's really ripped out the emotion of retirement plan into just being practical and pragmatic about it, which you need to be. I think that I'd love to see the emotional meter with the country go down a bunch of notches. We need to all kind of calm down, and especially everyone out here listening to this and watching this on the podcast. If you have some money, if you have some assets, calm down. You're good. You're blessed. You've worked hard. Yet it hadn't been given to you. But you need to buy this type of book that Marcia has put out. I haven't found anything like it since, and I believe me, I read them all. That it's just written in English. It's written for all of us. It's written for everyone at the top and the bottom, whether you have 20 million or 200,000, it doesn't matter, or 100,000, it doesn't matter. The level of amount of money doesn't matter. The fact that you got to start planning. But what I'd like for you to do, Marcia, is as we move out of this, and I'll close it up. I always ask my guests to do a mic drop moment. Hit us with the saying of the day to where people hear it and they just walk away and go, "Oh my gosh, that was good." So here we go. Count you down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mic drop moment. Marcia Mantell.
I am grateful. Every year I get older, I find I am more and more grateful. And I think particularly the back half of this conversation reminds me of that also. And how do I know I am wealthy? Because I can go to the grocery store and buy what I want. And I'm grateful.
I like that. That's a good way to end it. Thanks everyone for joining us on the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel and all major podcast platforms. My name is Stan the Annuity Man. You've been listening to Fun with Annuities with my special guest, Marcia Mantell. We'll see you next time.